Hey beauty, are you tired of being tired all the time? Struggling with fatigue, brain fog, or chronic symptoms that just won't go away? I created a free guide just for you. Feel better naturally. Simple, faith-based steps to overcome fatigue and chronic illness. It's a gentle, biblical approach to start supporting your body naturally without overwhelm or guesswork. You'll get practical steps rooted in faith to help you take that first step toward healing. Download your free copy at herholistichealing.com/free or just click the link in the show notes. Today, I have a special guest for you, Sarah Moreira. She is a nurse, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and mom of four. She has a decade of experience at the bedside as a labor and postpartum nurse, plus two functional health certifications and years of coaching and personal experience. She spent years chasing clean eating, supplements, and quick fixes until she learned how to support her body in the way it was designed to heal. Now she helps moms rebuild their energy, metabolism, and digestion with a unique blend of functional lab testing, mineral balancing, ancestral rhythms, and faith-rooted nervous system support paired with personalized protocols that work with your body, not against it. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation with Sarah. Let's get into the show. If you want to move away from modern medicine, if you want to discover healthier alternatives for your family, if you want a healthy body, then you're in the right place. Hey beauty, I'm Alexandra. I'm an author and clinical research nurse who discovered that Jesus is the source of true healing. I am the Lord your healer. Exodus 15:26. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have Sarah Moreira on the show. I just want to give a little backstory. Okay, so I've been hearing a lot about what you've been teaching when it comes to the sunlight and things like that. And so I wanted to talk more about it on the podcast. And then you emailed me, and I was so excited.
You listened before I emailed you?
No, I've been hearing from other people. So I really feel like God, like when he wants to teach me something, it's like, here, learn about this. And and then he points me in different directions and then you email me.
That's crazy. I love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so it's so cool to have you on the show. Can you just tell us a little bit about your story, how you went from conventional medicine to teaching moms about hormones and gut health through a functional lens?
Absolutely. So I actually started with my own health symptoms in high school. So, like as a teenager, a young teenager, I had major gut symptoms, acid reflux, major bloating, weight gain out of nowhere, kind of all the things that happen. But none of my friends were really experiencing that at that time. So it was interesting to me. And I really got no answers at that time. I went to my doctor, I went to GI specialists, I had endoscopies done, and really all they could give me was we see a bit of inflammation, but really everything else looks good. And here is a PPI, which is an acid reducer to help with the acid reflux and kind of sent me on my way. And even at 16 years old, I remember thinking, like, I don't want to take this medication. I took it for a little bit while, but I'm like, I quickly learned that this is not something that's supposed to be long term. This is supposed to be temporary. And it was just weird to me that no one ever explained that to me. And I'm just a very curious person, luckily. So I started looking into my symptoms and started kind of the way that a lot of people do is, let me remove gluten and let me remove dairy and maybe that can help my symptoms. And it did a little bit at first. And so I did get a little bit better at that point, and I figured, let me become a nurse because I'm interested in health and I want to help people. And what is the most perfect thing if you feel that way? And so that was nursing for me. I became a nurse and really started in adults and like heart surgery, so cardiovascular health. And it was frustrating to me because the patients were fed food that I know was not helping their conditions, especially after having heart surgery. And so that frustrated me. And we would see, and mind you, I worked on an acute floor in the hospital, and we would see the same patients returning and returning. And I'm like, this is odd, but this is how the conventional world is, right? Especially with chronic conditions. They're just brought in, adjust their meds, send them on their way. And I really just didn't agree with that. So I started moving around in the hospital to different specialties because that's what they tell you. As a nurse, you can do anything. So if you don't like what you're doing, switch it up. And even going through other multiple specialties, I realized the same trends were happening. So I went to pediatrics and worked with kids that were, having heart surgeries, and heart surgery was very necessary for them, but yet we're feeding them foods that are very inflammatory, not supportive for their blood sugar. And it was like, what is going on here? And it was really emotionally hard for me to work in that space. So I eventually went to labor and delivery, and I'm like, okay, this is a happy place. Let me try this. And I kept seeing the same patterns over and over of conventional medicine taking over. And like I've said to you in your podcast, I don't disagree with conventional medicine. Of course, we need it for certain things, but I really want to be able to help people and make a bigger difference. And once I started having kids, then my hormonal issues started, and I started having the extreme fatigue. Mind you, I was working night shift for 7 years, which really wrecked my circadian rhythm. And I was having mood swings at the time. I felt like I couldn't be present as a mom. I was always exhausted. And, when you work night shift, if anyone's ever been there, you know that you don't want the healthiest food when you're up at 3 a.m. in the hospital. So that became a thing. And I started, I found it really hard to lose the weight. My mood was just a mess. I was breaking out every month, just the typical hormonal imbalances that you see going on. And so I really had to stop and think, okay, I need to make a change. This is not working well for me. And I happened to find FDN, which was the certification that I did for functional health. And I learned so many things. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this world exists. And I don't know if you experienced this, but we learned so many things in nursing school. I mean, we went to nursing school for 2 years plus your undergraduate, all the things. So how did I not know any of this? It was like a whole new world had opened up, and I was sold at that point. So I really, last year I quit the hospital finally. It was hard because I really did enjoy some aspects of that job, but I knew that God was calling me to do something different and help people in a much different way. And so that is what I've been doing. And I started my own business. I've been a contractor for a couple other companies, but ultimately started my own business to help moms dealing with these gut and hormonal imbalances.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember hearing you saying on a podcast that you were on, I think that it was kind of the same thing I experienced in the hospital, where the charge nurse would call some of the patients frequent flyers because they would come into the hospital, they would get their meds or whatever treatment that they needed, they would go out, but then they would come back in. So it's kind of like when I saw that, I kind of thought to myself, man, like these patients keep on going out and coming back in, like, do they ever get better? So that was one of the turning points for me. So it's interesting to hear that you kind of had the same experience. So there's this beautiful order in creation: day and night, rest and work. How does living in rhythm with God's design for time, circadian rhythm, support our metabolism, hormones, and emotional well-being?
Yeah, when you read that, I have chills. It's so crazy. But the reason I really got into circadian rhythm, first of all, was I think because that was really a big part of my issue working night shift for so long, and fatigue was my main concern. And so I really got into how can we live like the way God designed naturally. We have sunlight and we also have darkness. So why does that even matter? So our circadian rhythm is fluctuating through the day. Cortisol is a circadian hormone that fluctuates through the day, right? We're meant to have cortisol wake us up in the morning. It rises and peaks around noon and slowly tapers off through the day to be really low when we're sleeping. And at that point, melatonin can then be released and help us sleep and stay asleep. And it's a potent antioxidant, and so many things are happening at night. And so we really need both of these things in order to have a really well working metabolism, for our hormones to be working properly, for our mood to be stabilized. It really is, to me, the ultimate foundation of health. And I've really come to believe that. And so that I just think that it's so important in overall health as a whole. We can eat a really perfect diet, we can exercise, we can do all the things that we're supposed to do, but if we're not getting the correct signals from light, because our cells actually receive those signals from light. And if we're inside all day, behind screens, our phone, our TV, our computer, and we're not getting that bright natural sunlight, our cells are getting the wrong signal and our bodies become confused. And so many people now are talking about cortisol, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, my cortisol is high. What do I do? Or, why I'm gaining weight because of cortisol. Well, it's really because our circadian rhythms are so mismatched in the environment that we live in. And we really do need that bright light from outside to signal the right things in our body. Same thing with nighttime. We really need it to be complete darkness at night. And God made light and dark for a reason. So it's one of those things where if we're in the house after sunset and we're exposed to TVs and screens and all the blue light, that is cortisol producing. So at the time of evening when we're supposed to be winding down, our cortisol is supposed to be lowering so our melatonin then could be increased and we're supposed to get sleepy. That's just not happening. We may be chronically tired because of this mismatch, but how many times maybe, you're watching TV, falling asleep, you lay down to go to bed and now your mind's racing. It's really a sign that circadian rhythm is just a big mismatch. So as important as light is, darkness at nighttime is just as important.
So what would you say to those people who say, I've heard people say that some healthcare professionals are kind of making an enemy of the sun. Like they're saying, you're gonna get burned, you should stay away from the sun. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, so many things are good or bad. We have to start thinking of things in the middle. Can too much sun be bad? Yes. We can get severely sunburned, and that is not good. But at the same time, one of the primary or the primary way that we make vitamin D is through sunlight in the middle of the day. And that is considered the type of light, UVB light, that can burn your skin. And so it really is something where we have to just kind of shift our mindset. A lot of people are saying, sunscreen is terrible, it's toxic, it's causing cancer, never wear sunscreen. And it's really, we have to look at it as, okay, if on a day-to-day basis, first of all, if we're getting appropriate sunlight in the morning and the evening, that actually helps us deal with midday sun better. And that is because in the morning and the evening, there is no UV light. There's primarily red light and infrared light, which is healing. It's actually collagen producing, and it actually counteracts all of the quote unquote negative effects of UVB rays. So that's one point to make, is like a lot of people that are saying this, they're not utilizing sun in that way. How many people, unless you're deliberate about it, are getting up out of bed and going out and bathing in the morning sunlight because it's healthy for us? A lot of people just don't know. I didn't know for the longest time. I wouldn't do that. I would go out in the middle of the day, and I live in Florida, so I would easily get sunburned if I was out for more than 10 minutes. But it's something that you have to build up to and live a circadian lifestyle as a whole. And so that's one important piece, is that certain behaviors and certain things in our environment will actually help us deal with the midday sun better. Another thing is, if you look at our ancestors, and even if you look at animals, they're more active in the morning and the evening, especially in those hotter summer months. You can burn, and that is not great, if you are out in UV rays, which is midday sun, for too long. So instead of sunscreen, maybe you just cover up if it's possible. Wear a hat, wear long sleeves if you have to be outside in that midday sun for longer than you can handle. And that'll look different for everybody, right? It is something you can work up to, but obviously the lighter your skin tone, it's going to be easier for you to burn than if you have darker skin tone. And so that's something to take into consideration too, and where you live and all that. And so those are kind of the main things that I think of. Now, I live in Florida. I have very pale skin. I've worked up to a nice underlying tan, which is protective, by the way. People will fight against that, but a tan is protective. There is such thing as a good stressor, and that is one of them. But if I go to the beach and I'm with my family, or we have guests visiting and we're at the beach all day, and I know I can't tolerate a certain amount of sun and I can't get shade, I'm going to wear sunscreen. Like, it's better than burning, So it's just, for me, really that lack of understanding that we can't look at things as so black and white. There's so much nuance with it and so much gray area that it really is important to look at it that way.
What would you say, what would you say to people that say that they're allergic to the sunlight? They're super sensitive and then they have those protective clothes that they wear.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. So I've seen that, I've actually worked with clients that have had that. One in particular that I'm thinking of, she loved the sun actually. She used to be in the sun all the time. And then it got to the point where she was having rashes and breaking out in the sun. She literally couldn't be out in the sun for more than 5 minutes. We started working together in within a month of diet changes and slow morning sunlight, right, to get that healing, those healing rays. She no longer had those breakouts and rashes. Now, I do know that there are people that have severe sun allergies. I'm not so educated in that specifically, right? There's certain things that are just, they're on that other side of the spectrum where it's, I don't, I'm not going to speak too much on that, but I will say, for people that are just experiencing a sensitivity, because I've had both. I've had someone who has a severe allergy, but also had just a sensitivity. The sensitivity can be helped by, like I said, living that more circadian friendly light. So not only getting appropriate light in the early morning before UV becomes available to prime the skin, but then also avoiding electronics at night and bright light in general. And by saying avoid electronics, there's things you can do. We can wear the orange tinted glasses, which will block the blue light. You can still watch TV. It's okay. There's like ways we can get around that in our day and age, in our modern world. But we can change the light bulbs out in our home. I never have the overhead lights on after sunset. I actually bought circadian friendly bulbs. Bon Charge is a really good website that actually has those. You can get red bulbs or full spectrum bulbs. So you'll have like a daytime setting and then evening setting, which is like more of an amber color. So really just working on your circadian environment as a whole. Food does come into play with that too. So eating certain foods and eating certain timing through the day too. I mean, that all does help. So that's something we could get into as well. But I think really the blue light at night is almost just as, it can affect you just as negatively as getting too much sun during the day. I mean, we really have to look at both situations.
So what are a few realistic, I know you've mentioned some of them, but a few realistic habits that our listener can start implementing that can actually make a difference in energy and overall health?
Yeah, definitely. So you can think of light rays from the sun as nutrients. And if we are depleted in those specific nutrients, then we might be low on energy. We might have hormone imbalance because those are actually, the signals from the sun are actually telling our certain hormones when to be released. And it's all circadian timing. Most of our organs are on a circadian timing as well. So some easy things that we can do is just shifting things around. We don't have to add another million steps to our routine. No one really has time for that. So it's just shifting kind of the way you think about your day to day. So I think morning sunlight is my number one. First thing in the morning, getting up and getting outside to get that healing light and really utilize that to your benefit. And I will do multiple things at once. Like I said, we're low on time in our modern day. So first thing in the morning, I get out, I get a little walk in, get the sunlight at the same time. You're working on your detox pathways, you're getting some movement in, so many things all in that one little 10-minute walk. So that's easy for me. For people that have to rush and get out the door, put your window down on your way to work. Such an easy way that we normally don't think of to get that sunlight in. Another thing is actually eating breakfast. So our metabolism, we need to eat food in the morning for our cortisol levels to not spike super high. Because if cortisol levels spike super high because your body is stressed, because you're not feeding yourself and getting nutrients that you need, your blood sugar is going to be out of whack. That's going to spike insulin. And you're kind of going to be on that roller coaster blood sugar wise all day long, where you're getting hangry through the day. You can't go 2 or 3 hours without eating Maybe you're having energy crash at 2 or 3 p.m. Those are really common signs that cortisol is dysfunctioning, as well as blood sugar, because when one's dysfunctioning, the other one surely is too. They're very connected. And so, eating breakfast, and then, to be honest, really having breakfast and lunch be your two biggest meals in the day. I know it's very backwards from how our culture lives, but circadian wise, that's really what makes the most sense, because as the day goes on, as we lose sunlight in the sky, it's our digestion starts to slow down. We're preparing for sleep. And so at 7 p.m., your digestion is not working nearly as well as it is at noon. And so really putting the majority of your meals and actually eating enough. So many people, I find there's kind of two camps. You're either eating really well and clean and your diet looks great, but you're just not fueling enough. There's not enough food and nutrients, or which is not many of the people that I work with, but if we're eating a lot of processed foods, eating out a lot, that can easily lead to overeating. But like I said, typically it's under eating, and that becomes the issue. And then some things in the evening that I think are really helpful, like I said, getting the orange tinted blue blocking glasses, not the ones that are just clear that tell you they're blue blocking, because those don't really do anything, but the ones that are actually orange tinted, and wearing those after sunset. I find it to be a little easier in the summer because it's lighter till, 8, 9 o'clock, depending on where you live. And so it's not such a big deal where we don't have so much darkness by the time we do go to bed. But in the winter, it can be really difficult. So I find those really helpful so that I'm not shutting down my whole life at 5 p.m. when it gets dark in the wintertime, because that's not realistic either. And so again, just eating dinner ideally before or by sunset is appropriate. Earlier in the summer, just because, like I said, it's light until 9 p.m. We do want to have a good 3 to 4 hour window before bed, since eating. But in the wintertime, yeah, I think that's probably the easiest thing. And then, like I said, the environment. So just looking at simple things like your light bulbs. I mean, who thinks of that? I would have never thought of that. And so now 99% of people have LED lights in the home, which are very harsh blue lights. And even if it doesn't seem like, you can dim certain lights, even if it doesn't seem super bright, it's really the blue base in the light that's problematic and can induce cortisol. So for anyone that is struggling with energy, weight loss resistance, anything that, acne, or whether it's hormonal acne or acne all the time, whatever it is, cortisol may very well be at the root of that. And these are simple ways that you can fix it, more than just what you're led to believe online, where people are telling you need to drink this magical drink and it'll heal your cortisol. We need to really implement these foundational things to see real results in that area.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it seems so simple. I was listening to another podcast where this lady, she went to a functional medicine practitioner and she took a bunch of supplements and stuff like that, but she didn't really see a change until she did stuff like going out in the sun in the morning. And it's simple. I mean, God put the sun in the sky for our healing, and you just leave it to God to give us something so simple for our healing. I love that. I know you also mentioned blood sugar, and that show that I was listening with you on it. You were talking about how controlling our blood sugar is not all about what we eat and carbs and stuff. Can you talk more about that? How does our blood sugar affect people that don't have diabetes, and what can we do for our blood sugar levels?
Yeah, it's one of those things where blood sugar is at the forefront of my program and anyone that I work with, because it is an issue for most people. And I always get the pushback that, my glucose looks good at the doctors. I don't think I have a blood sugar issue. I'm not pre-diabetic. But I will tell you, if your cortisol is dysregulated, so is your blood sugar. And that may not be showing up on lab work, right? So the doctor is going to test usually fasting glucose, maybe an A1C, and they're really not going to be the full picture of everything that's going on with your blood sugar. So if you can, a fasting insulin even would tell you a little more information than that. But I am a huge fan of continuous glucose monitors. Not always. I know this is a big thing of like, if you're not diabetic, you don't need one. But I've learned so much about myself, because like we talked about in your podcast, everyone is different. And so what affects one person negatively is not going to affect the other person negatively. Specifically with, foods. Like when I wore my continuous monitor, rice would shoot my blood sugar through the roof and give me really bad fatigue and cravings. But white potatoes were perfectly fine, and I love white potatoes. They have so many vitamins and nutrients. So, rather than taking out all these foods that are potentially good for us that God created, just figuring out how to make them work for your body a little better. So when we look at things besides food, it's literally all the things that we've already talked about to balance cortisol. Because if cortisol is elevated, think of cortisol and insulin as the hierarchy of hormones. They're at the very top and they're very closely tied. So all of the things that we talked about in terms of light and creating a really healthy circadian lifestyle will help blood sugar. The other thing that I love is a simple walk after you eat can be so beneficial for your blood sugar. It can actually reduce your blood sugar spikes by up to 30% just to go on a quick walk after you eat. If you can't get out for a walk, like sometimes what I'll do is I'll plan doing the laundry or doing the dishes after I eat, because that's movement. So any form of movement that you can do after you eat can be so helpful. I sit at my desk a lot now that I work from home. And so I'll even do, a couple sets of squats in between calls or like after my lunch, because I know I'm going to have to sit here. So there's so many ways that we can kind of make it work for our lifestyle, whatever that looks like, but that's a big one. And building muscle, I have to mention, because it really is important to have a place for glucose storage, and building muscle is going to be really helpful for overall metabolic health in general, especially long term.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. So as we wind down here, I wanted to ask you, because I know that I have some nurses that listen to the show. So for those nurses that might be working night shift, or people that might be working night shift in general, what advice do you have for those people?
Well, my first thought is to run from night shift. I kind of am joking, but kind of not. No, it's I get it. I get why people do it. I get and listen, we need night shift nurses. We really do. We have sick patients. Like, we can't not have that. So if you are someone who, and I would say not to plan on that long term if possible, like maybe you have like I told myself after 5 years, I did make it to 7, but I told myself after 5 years, no more. So it really is thinking about a few different things. So because you are up all night, under the artificial light all night, that's going to be really harmful. So if you can even, I would even like argue that wearing some type of circadian glasses could be helpful. Now, everyone's not going to want to do that because people will be looking at you and it'll be weird for some. I don't care anymore, but I get it. So really on your off time, so when you are home and it's daytime, getting as much sunlight as you can, really spending your mornings in the sun and regulating that circadian rhythm when you can. Also, when you're sleeping during the day, as you do as a night shift nurse, make your room extremely dark. Wear a sleeping mask, use the curtains, really block as much junk light, as I say, from coming in as possible, because that's going to help your body at least get rest during that sleeping period. And also at night, eating protein, eating fiber-rich foods to support blood sugar balance. Because what happens is, at least what happened for me, is I would just kind of eat whatever, and then what happens, you get cravings. And it's 3 a.m. and the last thing you want to eat is a good steak and vegetables. Like, at least for me, I'm like, I want the chips, I want the crap from the cafeteria, like whatever it is, I don't care, I'm so hungry. But if we can support our blood sugar, eating such a really good blood sugar supportive meal before going into the hospital. So eating good amount of protein, I say at least 30 grams a meal if possible. Getting in those fiber foods, getting in the healthy fats, and really supporting yourself up front at the beginning of your shift is going to help you throughout, have less cravings and the less desire to eat the crappier food. So those are some tips that'll help with that as much as possible.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being on the show. Before we go, do you have any last thoughts for us? And also let us know where our listener can find you.
Yeah, no, I think this was so great. One last thought is, really, you had mentioned this before, and I wanted to say about the vitamin D thing. I kind of mentioned it, but if God created the sun, as you said, and the sun is the only way that we can get vitamin D. There has to be, I mean, think about that really. Just that statement. I mean, it obviously is necessary for us to some degree. And it's interesting because vitamin D is one of the most important vitamins that we can have in the body. And it really regulates so many other minerals. And so minerals that are important for bone health. And I know that's such a big topic as we age, keeping our bones healthy. It supports immune function. I had almost next to no vitamin D levels at one point because I was afraid of the sun. And when I learned about all these things and started implementing these circadian principles, within like 6 months of a spring and summer, I actually increased my vitamin D levels without supplementation to normal levels. So it's totally possible to do without supplementing, which is a whole other topic. Vitamin D is helpful, supportive for your mood and brain health. It's essential for balancing hormones, metabolism, reduces the risk of chronic disease. So many chronic diseases and chronic symptoms are linked to low vitamin D, specifically MS off the top of my head, osteoporosis, insulin resistance. So it's just, to me, so amazing to see all the benefits that we get from this specific vitamin that is primarily given to us from the sun. So while I'm not saying go out and burn yourself, have safe sun practices, wear sunscreen if you absolutely need it and there's no way you can cover up, but start building up those habits daily and you will get to the point where, and sunglasses too. Sunglasses actually cause you to burn more because it's actually blocking how bright and the amount of UV light that's actually available. So when you're wearing sunglasses, your brain is again confused of how bright it really is outside. And so when you don't wear sunglasses, your body can sense the UV and help create those, the support the melanin to block that sun. And I'm not saying that, you know, if you're out for a whole hour in the Florida sun, you're not going to burn. You probably will. But again, be safe about it. Think about it not as such a black and white thing. So I really just wanted to mention that because I know that's such a big topic with each side of the coin, right? But yes, I have a podcast called Hormone Health for Moms. So I would love to see you guys over there. I have a website called functionalmom.com, and that's primarily where you can find me.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to grab your free guide before you go. Feel better naturally. Simple, faith-based steps to overcome fatigue and chronic illness. Inside, you'll find biblical encouragement and natural, doable steps to begin feeling like yourself again without the confusion or burnout. Head to herholistichealing.com/free or tap the link in the show notes to download it now. You can feel better naturally. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, would you take a minute to leave the show a review? If you want to connect with me, you can go to my free community. The link is tinyurl.com/holistic sisterhood, or you can go to herholistichealing.com. Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
For you is easy and my burden is light.
This content is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be medical advice.